Hello, I just wanted to do a little video about this. By the way, I got a new pop filter on my microphone. Hopefully it sounds a little better. Let me know. No, my wife and I, Amy, if you ever hear me refer to somebody named Amy, that's my wife. We know each other pretty well. I feel like I should just say her by her name. But Amy and I went this weekend and we saw the Mr. Rogers documentary. Won't You Be My Neighbor is the name of it. And I wanted to talk about it because it was maybe one of the most affecting movies I've seen in a long time, if not ever. And what I mean by affecting is, I'm not kidding. It wasn't even 10 minutes into the movie and I was fighting back tears. Like I was hard trying to keep from squeezing one out. And it was like that all the way through the movie. It was kind of a remarkable thing. And if you follow me on Twitter, I talked a little bit about this, so this might be something you've already read. Obviously, in a video, I can talk a lot more about it than I could on a few tweets. But I grew up watching Mr. Rogers. But here's the funny thing: like, there are all these little cartoon characters, puppets that he uses. There was one called Daniel the Tiger, and there was King Friday, and there was this Eloise, this really angry witchy type woman. And I don't remember any of that. I don't remember anything specifically about the show, and I don't remember having any attachments to these, characters and stuff. But I remember watching it. I mean, who didn't watch it at some point when they were a kid, And so there was a lot of it in there that I was kind of learning as I was going, and it wasn't so much that I had this like real personal, because my wife did. My wife was like, "Oh, I loved Daniel when I was a kid, Daniel the Tiger," and I'm like, I don't remember, Daniel, but there was something about Mr. Rogers himself, and I want to back up just a little bit and say I've been looking forward to this movie long before I knew it existed. I've been sort of fascinated by Fred Rogers for a really long time, because we have this cynical mindset, especially in the Me Too era, where all of our heroes are falling down and turning out to be monsters. I did a video about that. But we've come to just expect that people like him don't really exist, that there's some horrible skeletons in our closet. That's why there are rumors going around that he was a Navy SEAL or a sniper and killed all these people and had tattoos down his arms, and that's why he wore, the sweaters and stuff. So we kind of feel this need, I feel like, to justify that, to kind of put that into the narrative that we've so gotten accustomed to. We've become so cynical about it. But everything I've ever read or seen or heard about Mr. Rogers, about Fred Rogers, is that he is exactly the guy that he was on TV. That he was just like this near perfect person, and his entire worldview was around love and empathy. And I felt a kinship with him a bit in the movie, because they talked about how, for somebody who was on television his whole life nearly, he really hated television, and that was why he wanted to go into it, was because he had a background in children's psychology, he had a background in seminary, he was a minister, and he had a background in music. So he wanted to kind of combine all that into this TV show. And he hated what children's programming was doing. It was all pies in the face, and it was all, Three Stooges and slapstick and people getting hurt. And he felt like there's got to be a better way to talk to kids. He wanted to kind of elevate the platform, and he hated what he was seeing on TV. And I do feel a kinship with him in a sense, because as somebody who is on YouTube, there's a lot of things about YouTube I really hate. Prank channels, reaction channels, just this lowest common denominator bullshit that people do just to get clicks and just to get, AdSense revenue and stuff. And people there's this whole wave of like provocateurs, people who don't even believe what they're saying. They just say things to rile people up and divide people. That's what pisses me off the most, is people who get a platform and then use it to divide people. Especially when, I'm not going to call it any names, I could, but especially when they don't even believe what they're saying. It's all clearly an act. It's kind of going off on a tangent there, but the point is, like, I like to think that I am doing my part to maybe elevate the platform a little bit, you know? I mean, yes, I bring the humor in and I'll make a dick joke every once in a while, but I feel like I'm teaching people, you know, and I get comments and emails from people that say that they were never interested in science until they watched my channel, and then they wanted to go into science fields, and that's amazing to me. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn too much, and I'm certainly not going to try to compare myself to Fred Rogers, but I get where he was coming from, I guess is what I'm saying. I kind of felt that. But the thing that struck me the most, and the reason why I was just, and by the way, let me 10 minutes in, I was doing one of these. I was like trying really hard to not let the person next to me see that I was doing this. I didn't care if Amy saw me do it, but there was somebody sitting right here, and I was like, oh God, I don't want to, some stranger. But I mean, the entire movie I was fighting them back, and there were times when I just couldn't, and they were just going down my face. And I think the reason it affected me so much, and this has to do with some other things that I've read. I think deep down inside all of us, there is a scared, confused child that maybe we don't listen to anymore. We may be locked in a vault somewhere because who needs that? Who needs to deal with that? When Matt Smith left Doctor Who and he had that major last transformation, the AC just went off. I hope the sound didn't change too much. He did this whole thing where he was like, he talked about how as the Doctor, I don't know if anybody of you follow Doctor Who, but he kind of changes to a different Doctor over and over again. And he talked about how we all change throughout our lives. If you think about it, we're all different people throughout our lives, and that's okay as long as we remember the people that we were before. And it's sort of along those lines. I think in a way that's true. I think embedded in our psyche is all the different stages that we've been through. And I think most of the time we can kind of tamp it away and not think about it and let it kind of sit over there. But every once in a while, you step back into it. You step back into that time when you were in college and you just had no idea where things were going in your life, or the time in college when everything was wide open and you felt so free, even though you were sleeping on some dude's couch, you felt like king of the world, But one of those people, I think, is a scared, confused child. And something about this movie, maybe there is a little bit of the nostalgia component to it, but also just something about Fred Rogers and the way he espoused his worldview and the way he treated people and the way he spoke about children. It was just like a crowbar that just opened up that vault, and that scared little boy that used to crawl inside the toy box that my grandmother would give me. It just came out, and I just, this flood of emotion just came out of me, and it was remarkable. It made me think of a video. If I can find it, I'll put a little card here, or whatever, on here. But it's definitely worth watching, especially if you're interested in this kind of stuff. If you've heard of ayahuasca or DMT, these are like psychedelic substances. Ayahuasca is sort of more of a shamanistic treatment, I guess. But it's very hallucinogenic, and it kind of helps you to face things and understand things that you couldn't before, things that your brain had kind of sequestered. It kind of opens all that up. Well, there's a video from a channel called Charisma on Command. The guy who runs it, his name's Charlie. He did this. He did the whole thing. He went down to South America, went out into the Amazon with a shaman and these other people. And people do this as a therapeutic psychological treatment, but it's also good for like drug treatment, stuff like that, getting people off drugs. But his video is really amazing because he talks about how, he took this drink and immediately turned into like a 7-year-old boy. Like everything was just funny, and he was laughing, and other people were just breaking down crying, and he couldn't stop laughing. He felt terrible because he was laughing at other people, but he just turned into this child. Something that, like, about this drug just cracked that thing open, and out comes this little boy. So apparently, I'm totally paraphrasing this. It's definitely worth watching. But apparently they, in the course of this thing, they do it over 3 consecutive nights, 2 or 3 consecutive nights. So the first night he was just laughing and he kind of felt bad about it. And then the next day they sit down with the shaman and the therapist, whatever, and they kind of walk through, okay, what was your experience last night? Okay, well, this next time maybe focus on this and see where it takes you, kind of thing. And the next night he said that sort of 7-year-old boy came out, but he was able to have a conversation with it. And I'm not going to try to paraphrase it because it's worth watching. But he had this sort of moment with his younger self. And he was able to see how hurt this boy was and how he'd been neglecting that part of himself. And that's really where I'm trying to get to here, is that the thing about the Mr. Rogers documentary and the way it affected me and this whole story that Charlie tells in that video, it all kind of makes me think about our inner child, our confused, scared child that is locked away in a vault that has his own dreams, his or her own dreams and needs, and we ignore this part of ourselves. And to our own detriment, I think. And he talks a lot about, like, it's good to look back at the things that you did when you were a child, that you did just out of pure joy, and reconnect with that. Because we lose that over time. We lose touch with that. And we need that. We need that joy in our lives, or some aspect of it. There was something about the thing that gave you joy when you were a child that you could get back again. All of that was just amazing. And again, you can check out that video. But there was something about this movie that struck that same nerve with me. It just made me feel like I was overwhelmed with the emotions that came out of me, and I was not expecting it. And it just made me think about, wow, there's something down in there that I've not been listening to. And I don't know. I just kind of felt like sharing that because it was a remarkable experience for me. And I don't know how many of you might have seen it. If you had a similar experience, I would love to hear about it in the comments, but I can't recommend the movie enough. It was a very different kind of documentary in terms of it being about a person, usually a biological documentary or biographical. A biographical documentary is usually like, he was born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1952. And then, and it kind of follows through until the person dies. They didn't really do that with this one. They didn't tell the story of Fred Rogers. It was really more about like, just kind of I thought what was so good about it was he had this amazing worldview about love and empathy, and he espoused this his entire life. But of course, you can't get all that at once. You have to kind of see it here and there, and it's like, oh yeah, he thinks that thing, that's good. But there was something about the way they were able to take all that and encapsulate it into this one movie that you could sit down and just absorb the whole thing. And it was like, holy shit, that's amazing. That's amazing. And he was an amazing human being. A very eccentric human being, but an amazing one. But anyway, no, I'll leave you with this. At the end of the movie, unless it's a Marvel film, not a lot of people stick around to the end of the credits. Most people kind of get up and walk out. I think more than half of the audience was still sitting in that chair when the lights went up at the end of the credits, because we were all just trying to compose ourselves. Like that's how impactful that movie was. Like nobody wanted to walk outside in public with tears streaming down their faces, but we were all sitting there just like, wow. The audience applauded at the end of it. How often does that happen when the filmmaker isn't there, Anyway, I'm getting verklempt just talking about it, as you can tell, but I can't recommend the movie enough. Go see it. And anyway, and think about that inner child that maybe you're not listening to. Think about how you can take care of that part of yourself, because it's a powerful thought exercise. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I hope you guys are doing well. Love you guys. I'll see you later.